What am I doing trying to fit 23 books into one video? Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here, and sort of a new tradition that I'm starting. Actually, I think I started it last year. I did 22 books for 2022. I'm going to do the same thing for 2023, except, there's 23 books, and I kind of ramble on and on and on and on. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. These are just 23 books that I want to get to at some point during 2023. Hopefully I get to maybe half of them. These are all books that I took off the shelves. You can see like all the gaps and stuff. But I think I got 10 nature books, 11 history-ish books, and then 2 kind of special books that we'll do at the end here. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. Otherwise, we're going to be here for like 3 hours. All right, so first up, we got 2 books by Jennifer Ackerman. We got The Birdway, a new look at how birds talk, work, play, parent, and think, as well as Birds by the Shore. I read her Genius of Birds a long time ago, and it's really good. And I've seen so many good things, especially about The Birdway. But Birds by the Shore actually sounds really good to me too, because I don't live on the Atlantic coast per se, but I always go down. I go to down east, like all the time, which is kind of like it is the Atlantic coast, but I think this is down a little bit farther south or whatever. But anyways, sounds really fun. Sounds really good. I'm trying to get more into bird watching this year. I've been watching some of my other channels and stuff. So these are just like 2 books that should really fit the bill for helping me understand and learn more about birds. All right, let's go to a history book. I guess we'll just like alternate them a little bit. We got Everyday Life in Ancient Mesopotamia by Jean Botero or something like that. I don't know if it's Jean or Jean. But anyways, this was a recommendation given to me on another video a long time ago where I was talking about like social histories or wanting more social histories of something like that. And someone recommended this one. I looked at it, had great reviews, looked really good. I really enjoy social history. So just how did people, actually live and work and spend their days back in ancient, Sumer or the Ur-3 dynasty or something like that? How did you actually go about your life? It would have been a lot rougher than it is now. We complain a lot. I'm sure it was harder 4,500 years ago. But yeah, I'm always interested in learning how people lived and everything like that. So there's that one. Next up, we have The Edge of the Sea by Rachel Carson. This is actually the 3rd book in her Sea trilogy. There's Under the Sea Wind, The Sea Around Us, and At the Edge of the Sea. She's also probably more famously known for her Silent Spring as well. I think I read these a long time ago. I remember reading Under the Sea Wind not too long ago. But I'm pretty sure that was a reread, because I think I read these in college, or maybe I just read long excerpts or something. But I'm on the edge of the sea now, so like I said, it's just a really great, poetically written, I don't know how to explain it. You learn a lot, but it's kind of just like an ode to the ocean and stuff by Rachel Carson. So if you know who Rachel Carson is, you should read this one too. All right, and then we got Food and Antiquity. It doesn't have a dust jacket, so I don't have anything great to say about the looks and stuff. But it's written by Donna Pernicia Brothwell, and this is all about different husbandry practices, farming practices, what people actually were eating, in ancient and classical civilizations. What did the Greeks and Romans and Mesopotamians, what did they actually eat on a daily basis and stuff? What was their diet? Kind of things like that interest me. It's kind of like another social history, but obviously just focusing on food and things. From flipping through, it had all kinds of different things like beekeeping. I think probably some cooking practices, things like that. So it's going to be just chock full of anything that you're eating in the ancient world. It's probably going to be in here at some point. Next up, we have The Wood for the Trees, One Man's Long View of Nature by Richard Forty. He has a really good book kind of on geology and kind of the history of the earth. But what he did was he bought a couple of acres of forest land in England where he lives. And it's just sort of his observations over the course of the year. So it sounds really familiar to David Haskell's The Forest Unseen, as well as Bernd Heinrich's The Trees in My Forest. My plan was to read all 3 of them back to back to back. That didn't happen, but this is the odd one out still, so gotta get to this one. I really enjoy stuff like that. It's kind of what I try to do at my property and whatnot, but like I said, you'll probably see that more on literary walks if I ever bring them back. Alright, next up, we have Freedom in Greek Life and Thought, The History of an Ideal by Max Pollins. And this is sort of just like, it sounds just like an intellectual history of the concept of freedom and what it meant to the Greeks. And it's split into two parts, kind of more like personal, intellectual freedom, like the freedom of ideas and being able to do stuff, as well as political freedom and the freedom to actually go out and do things like that. But it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of like a cultural, intellectual history. It sounds really good that I'm trying to do for a Historathon. So that's why I want to read that one. Next up, we have Thor Hansen's Feathers. I don't know if is there a subtitle here? The Evolution of a Natural Miracle. That's actually probably pretty true. I've read two of his other books, one on seeds right there, and then also Hurricane Lizards and Plastic Squid that recently came out, that I probably should do a review for now, come to think of it. But yeah, I'm hoping this book has a lot of like kind of up-to-date research on feathers, since like now that we know the majority of dinosaurs had some sort of like pin feathers and stuff, and how they evolved to kind of like regulate temperature and stuff, and then kind of became more like flight instruments and or things to help certain lineages fly and whatnot. But yeah, I think it'd be kind of fun to learn all about feathers, and like I said, it kind of goes with my bird watching, the bird theme, things like that. Actually, I probably have more bird books I probably should have thrown in, but actually there's one coming up after this one. But we got Circumference by Nicholas Nicastro, Eratosthenes and the Ancient Quest to Measure the Globe. This is kind of like a biography as well as kind of a history of ideas during the classical age. Eratosthenes was the chief librarian at the Library of Alexandria, for those who know what that is. So it was a pretty good position. A lot of people don't know who Eratosthenes is, though, because the joke is, even in his lifetime, he was always considered the second best at pretty much everything. He was like the second best mathematician, he was the second best poet, all that kind of stuff. But he measured the circumference of the globe to within about a couple hundred kilometers, which is pretty impressive, if you ask me. So it's going to be all about kind of that, kind of all the history of just sort of the ideas kind of going around during, the classical age. So there's that. Next up is another bird book, like I just said. We have Crow Planet, Essential Wisdom from the Urban Wilderness by Landa Haupt, who's probably more famous for Rooted now. But this was an earlier book by her, and I think someone recommended this one to me as well. I have a lot of I got a lot of birds. Like right now, I can literally see like 5 blue jays just like in the feeder tray right now. It's just trying to bully some chickadees, but the chickadees aren't having it. But anyways, we do have crows sometimes. Though I think we got too many other birds that try to like mob them essentially when they try to like raid too much. But I love crows. We have a pair of ravens every now and then. But just learning more about them and how they kind of, maybe not taken over the world, but since they're such generalists, they can survive in a lot of different environments, including urban ones. I think it'll be kind of interesting to learn about them in particular. Next up, we have an Oxford very short introduction where I try to read one a month, or average 12 during the course of the year. This one's Epicureanism to kind of go with my Historathon. I'm hoping there's a lot on the origins of Epicureanism, during the classical Greek age. It does get a bad rap as sort of like hedonism and stuff, but if you actually read the primary source material on it, it was more of just like having, how do I want to say it? It was like having pleasure through like not having wants. Like you don't need anything, you don't want anything. That way, like, you're not like disappointed and stuff, and that's like what pleasure is and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, it kind of spun like out of control over the course of history, so I think it'll be kind of an interesting kind of philosophical like history reading. So there's that one. Next up, we have kind of a biography. We got Lab Girl by Hope Jahren. Her Story of More is a really, 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 really good book on kind of not necessarily just climate change, but just overconsumption of like the world's materials and stuff, and sort of how it's like so detrimental to like electrical, like using so much electricity, overfishing, like animal husbandry, obviously like plastic pollution, climate change, all that kind of stuff, kind of all rolled up into one, and it's just super down to earth, but a lot of like science and figures as well. So it's hard to argue against, which is why I like sharing it with people. But this is sort of her biography as being like a woman in a very male, like kind of dominated, scientific laboratory setting. And it's had really, really good reviews, so I picked it up and I just need to get to it at some point. Next up is Barry Lopez's Arctic Dreams, Imagination and Desire in a Northern Landscape. He's written a ton of travelogues. Unfortunately, I think he passed away was about a year ago around Christmas. But I haven't read any of his material. They're always super. Arctic Dreams is usually the one at the highest rating there. But as far as like nature travelogues and kind of just observations and stuff go, he's always considered like one of the top tier authors on that. So I just need to like just buckle down, actually get one in. I don't know why I have two of his books. I think I have this one, and I got this one right here, About This Life, Journeys on the Threshold of Memory. And like I said, they're always like highly regarded, so not really sure why I have. Probably the size, because this is the only one I have, though all his books aren't necessarily like that big. But anyways, I need to get to it at some point. Next up, we got Hannibal's The Life and Wars of Rome's Greatest Enemy by John Previs. And it's basically just because it's like a Hannibal / Punic War book. I'm reading another biography of Hannibal as we speak right now. But yeah, this is one I've had for longer, and I picked up the other one because I got it for my birthday. So I was like, oh, I should read the gift one first. But I got almost a whole Punic War shelf. So probably should like try to actually get through the Punic War shelf. That way I can like talk about all of them. I think that'd be kind of a cool idea for those who are interested in the Punic Wars. Also, Hannibal's a really cool figure. You should read about him. Next up, I think I messed up because I got a whole bunch of history books and not a whole lot of science nature books. We have Julius Caesar by Philip Freeman. Philip Freeman, the reason I picked this one up is Philip Freeman is the author of Hannibal that I'm reading right now, but this is a much older one. He writes a lot of like biographies of the classical age, it seems. I've never actually read, I don't think I've ever read a straight biography of Julius Caesar per se. I've read a lot of books about from different perspectives, like dealing with Caesar, like Caesar and like being a populist, or Caesar and the Gallic, his Gallic campaigns, things like that, the assassination of Caesar, the fall of the Republic and stuff, but never read just like a straight just biography of Julius Caesar. So I think that might be kind of like a refreshing take. Plus I like Philip Freeman's kind of like just calm writing style. I don't know if calm's what that was, just calm and crisp writing style, so that's why I picked this one up as well. Next up, we have John Granger's The Galatians, Celtic Invaders of Greece and Asia Minor, that I'm reading for Historathon, after probably my book on Hannibal. For those who don't know, let's see, Galatia, if you read the Bible, let's see, Paul's letter to the Galatians. This is who he's writing to, is a Celtic tribal people that sort of invaded Turkey, or where Turkey would be today, in Anatolia, during the kind of classical age around 200 in the 200 or 100s or 200s BCE, and then they kind of just settled there and everything. So there was like kind of a nation state of Celtic tribe people in the middle of Turkey, and that's who the Galatians were. But I don't know too much about them. I've like read about them in other history books, sort of in passing, but never like done a deep dive of them. So that's why I picked up this book at some point, and I need to actually get to reading it. Alright, next up we have a history of the Ostragos by Thomas Burns. The Ostragos, the Goths in general are more famous for being known as sort of the actual barbarian tribe that took over Rome during the fall of Rome in the 400s and stuff. The Visigoths actually, under Alaric, actually sacked the city of Rome first in 410, but it's the Ostragos under Odovaker around 476, the last emperor of Rome and all that kind of stuff is going on. That's who like did the kind of coup de grace, a blow there. But this has got a lot of archaeological material, as you can see, like different illustrations and like drawings and photographs from like the finds and stuff, and some of the treasure hoards and stuff. So I think that's going to be a really fun read. Okay, next up we have a nature book. We got The View from Lazy Point by Carl Safina. A Natural Year in an Unnatural World. I read 3 of it. I think I've read 4 of his books so far now. I read 3 last year: Becoming Wild, Eye of the Albatross, and Song for the Blue Ocean. This one is sort of like the forest ones I was telling you about earlier. It's sort of his point where he lives in New York along the coast, and kind of the different as the seasons go by and the different directions and stuff. How the world is kind of interconnected to like his location through different ways and stuff. I don't know, it sounds really good. Carl Safina he's in my top 3 favorite nature authors. I plan on reading his entire bibliography at some point, so that's why I picked The View from Lazy Point. Next up, we got The Fourth Crusade and the Sack of Constantinople by Jonathan Phillips. This is like one of those crazy historical events that you'd almost not believe it if it's just something you don't want to believe. It's the Fourth Crusade is, things aren't going great in the Holy Land for the Christians and stuff. So they want to, let's go do another crusade, blah, blah, blah. And then it ends up getting completely derailed because a lot of the Italian city-states like Venice and stuff kind of just want to take some different cities just for their own little maritime empire, and eventually that's sort of what happens, and then they just fight Constantinople, and that's the end. But there's a lot of really cool stories. There's a blind 90-year-old doge, what's his name, Enrico Dandolo, I think, something like that. He's literally blind and in his 80s or 90s, and he when one of the attacks isn't going well, he tells his guys, throw me on the shore by myself. And they were like, what? And he goes, just do it. And they do it. And then everyone realizes, oh my gosh, our leader who's blind and 90 years old is out there by himself. And then they fight harder and actually take a tower or something. It's so ridiculous. You have to read it to believe it. Alright, next up we have Plight of the Living Dead, What Real Life Zombies Reveal About Our World and Ourselves by Matt Simon. This just sounds like a really interesting title. There's a lot of insects and a lot of animals and a lot of invertebrates, everything. I don't know why I didn't just say animals, insects and invertebrates are animals. But anyways, there's a lot of parasites, and apparently a lot of them do zombify other creatures. Probably most notably, there's that fungus that attacks ants. It makes them do crazy things and explode and get the spores everywhere. There is a lot of wasp, like the emerald wasp, that zombifies a cockroach essentially by stinging it a certain part in its brain, so it guards the larva and stuff. It's pretty crazy. I read one of his other books. I can't remember, what is it? The Brainwash the Caterpillar. So he kind of has a thing for this topic. That one was just a kind of just a weird encyclopedic romp through all kinds of just crazy animal interactions and stuff. Whereas I think this one's focusing only on the zombification kind of aspects and stuff. But he's kind of a comedian, so it reads really well, and I enjoyed the first one, or the other one. Next up we have a Folio Society book. Because I think I only read 2 last year, so I gotta actually get going on this one is Life in a Medieval Castle by Joseph and Francis Gies. I've read Life in a Medieval City and Life in a Medieval Village. Life in a Medieval City is one of the best social histories I think ever written. So this is just the third one in that sort of set that I haven't read. For some reason, I just haven't read this one. But all 3 of them kind of have a matching Folio Society edition, so definitely check that one out if that sounds interesting. You learn all kinds about. This one's going to be all about how did people actually live in a castle? What did that mean? What was it actually like to do so? So, if you're interested in castles, probably definitely read that one. All right, for my 2 kind of more special titles, I have Margaret Roach's Away to Garden, a hands-on primer for every season. She has the pretty famous podcast Away to Garden, and it's the only podcast that I actually listen to for maybe not every single week, but most of the time. And it's just kind of a garden primer on landscaping and gardening for different shrubs and flowers and all kinds of stuff. And kind of how to use heirloom varieties, which is what I try to do a lot of times. I use native plants and things like that for your area. I just really enjoy listening to her. She's super down to earth and super knowledgeable. Just got tons of experience and stuff. So I think this was originally published 20 years ago, and she did a new edition a couple of years ago. And then my wife actually got me the autograph one from one of her local bookstores. Her signature is pretty ridiculous there. But anyways, I think I'm gonna really enjoy it. For those who don't know, I think we have 3 gardens that we do. Usually, we got a wildflower garden, a cut flower garden, and then my giant vegetable garden. So, and then I try to keep the landscape. I actually don't really do any landscaping, but I try to keep it kind of wild-ish. I don't even know what the term is there for there. I'll probably have to do a yard tour at some point when I do all my nature stuff. But anyways, and then last up to tie it in, we got J.R.R. Tolkien's The Nature of Middle-earth in the deluxe HarperCollins edition. Fall of Numenor just came out a month or 2 ago, but this one came out a year ago, and I didn't quite get to it. I got it for Christmas, I think, not last month, but the year before. But yeah, it's just kind of an encyclopedia compendium of a whole bunch of just nature, not nature topics, but the nature of Middle-earth as in different things regarding Middle-earth, how it works, time and chronology, how does that work? One of the topics was like do elves actually like age, and how does that like actually work and things like that. So it's just really really fun. I enjoy it. I've read through some of it, but like I said, I haven't like read through the whole thing. Just like for example, here we go, the world, its lands and inhabitants. We got like, note on the consumption of mushrooms as like an essay letter. The aging of Numenorians. Dwellings in Middle Earth. Stuff like the elvish life cycles. Stuff like that. All kinds of fate and free will. How does that actually work? So there's a whole bunch of really really cool stuff. Tolkien is like one of the only. There's Tolkien and like Warhammer, and that's pretty much all I do for fiction anymore. So, but I do really enjoy Tolkien stuff. So I have a Tolkien shelf as well. I'm trying to like build up though. I got a pretty late start with a bit. Anyways, there's 23 books. I'm probably at like 23, 30 minutes at this point. Like this is going on for long enough. For anyone who actually made it this far, you were a brave soul. You were dedicated. You need an award for that. But anyways, let me know if you have any books that you want to read, that you have on your shelves right now that you need to get to this year. I'm always on the hunt for good recommendations. And whatever you actually end up reading in 2023, always remember, read victoriously.